Welcome to the Chai Academy. I am Rabbi Sachs, and we are talking human development. You know, we all develop, right? From children into adults. The question is, how do we develop? As we discussed in our previous class, some are dragged up, some are brought up, what we need to do is to make sure that we are the best possible people we can be, and that when we rear our children to be the best possible people they can be. So, just as a quick recap, this is a self-encapsulated class, but just as a quick recap, the Talmud says that parents are obligated to teach their children the following and give their children the following. So we discussed number one yesterday at great length in the previous class. A parent is obligated to circumcise their child. We discussed it doesn't literally only mean circumcision, but it means give them an identity. And you can see the building block number one in our previous class on the Academy. The one we're going to be discussing today, it says parents have to redeem their child. On the 31st day is a biblical command to take your firstborn child to the priest and give him some money. He will give you the child, and it's not for now, but so today's class is going to be redeem. Then of course there's the next four. So number 3 is to teach Torah. Number 3 to teach Torah. Number 4 to marry him off. Number 5 is to teach them a vocation, a trade. And number 6 is to teach them how to swim. Each one is deeper than the next. So, as we said yesterday, was all about development. Today, we're talking about you have to redeem your child. What does that mean? What does that mean, redeem your child? So, redeem child is symbolic of that you have to free. You have to let others be free. You have to be free. You know, to be a helicopter parent, as an example, is not a good thing, because then the children grow up somewhat dysfunctional because they're always tied to the apron string, and it's hard. It's hard to sever the umbilical cord. It is, but for one's children to soar, you need to give them that independence. Safety comes first. I'm not talking about if it's unsafe, then game's over. But talking in general. So we have to allow our children to make mistakes. You know, successes, and you applaud them for successes, that's one type of lesson. Failures are probably better lessons than successes, because the child now experiences failure. It didn't go their way, so now they're going to have to perhaps study better for a test or act more appropriately in the future. So that freedom in terms of our parents, we also have to teach. Humans have to know that we're not shackled. Right? We're not shackled at all. We are free. We are free to be whom we want to be, what we're able to achieve, and don't let certain things define you if they're going to bring you down. Now, that's easier said than done. Easier said than done, because our past does define us. But we have to, and sometimes you can't shake that. You can't shirk that. Many times. You know, that's You know, where people are in therapy for many years to shake the past. But we have to realize that we are our own person. We are our own. We're running our own life. We're not shackled, and that's what freedom means. It also means you have free will. You can make good decisions or bad decisions. One cannot blame the actual decision, the actual poor decision on somebody. At that delta, at that crossroads, you have free will. You're not shackled. And you can choose to do good. You can choose to do bad. Somebody comes to you and asks you for help, a relative, a representative of a Jewish charity. You can say yes with a smile and help them. You can say not now with a smile and urge them to come back when it's better, or give them something now, or pledge. Or you can say no with a scowl. The choice is yours. The choice is absolutely yours. What you do at that moment, can't blame anybody. It is completely in your purview to do as you choose to do. There's a story about this fellow that came into a bar. He orders scotch on the rocks. He drinks the scotch, and he throws the glass onto the floor. And the bartender says, what are you doing? He goes, I'm so sorry. My upbringing was so crazy. My upbringing was so rough and tough. I saw this in my house. So the bartender says, okay, I get it. Comes the next day, scotch on the rocks, and then he throws and smashes the glass on the floor. And the bartender says, what now? He goes, my father was an alcoholic. I don't know what came over me. I am so embarrassed. Okay, the next day, he smashes the glass again. The bartender says, come on, man. He goes, I'm sorry. My mother, she was a control freak. My mother brought out the worst in me. I am so embarrassed. Bartender lets it go. The next day, he does it again. And he goes, I'm just dysfunctional. I'm off. Something wrong with me. I'm ill-tempered. I'm not normal. I lack social skills. I am so embarrassed. So the bartender says to him, embarrassed or not, get help. Get therapy. And don't come back here until you do. A year goes by. The fellow swore that he would go into therapy. He comes, he orders a scotch on the rocks, finishes it, and he smashes the glass. So the bartender said, hey, I told you to go to therapy. He goes, I did go to therapy. He said, I went for 1 year, a full year, once a week, therapy. He says, yeah, and you learned nothing from therapy? He goes, no, I did. He goes, what'd you learn? He goes, I learned not to be embarrassed. It's our choice whether to smash that glass or not smash that glass. It's completely our choice. And by the way, Passover, which is a holiday that Jews celebrate in the near future, is all about freedom. Right? It's all about freedom. There's freedom. We're slaves to people. That's called your conventional slavery. We could also be slaves to somebody, to a spouse who abuses us, or slaves to a boss, or we can be codependent on someone else. This is all not free. You're not free. So you can also be a slave to your own mind. Your mind can drive you crazy and make you do things that you shouldn't do or wouldn't do. So Passover is all about liberation. It's all about getting rid of your yoke that's around your neck. Physical yoke, spiritual, emotional, psychological. Be free of the yoke. There could be limitations others impose on you, or limitations that you pose on yourself. Passover teaches us, get rid of it. Get rid of it. You're a new person. You don't have to live this way. You can absolutely do. If you put your mind to it, you can rise above a difficult upbringing. You can make your goals and aspirations. You can fulfill your life's objectives. You can. I recall with fondness that the 4-minute mile, they've been trying to break it for years. Athletes have tried to break that 4-minute mile. Couldn't. And one day, a fellow by the name of Roger Bannister, he broke the 4-minute mile. He was able to overcome this obstacle that nobody else could for years, centuries. Let me tell you what happened after Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile. All of a sudden, many could. No, Roger Bannister wasn't the only one. He did it first. He proved that this obstacle could be overcome, and that's all the athletes needed to hear and see. Obstacles can be overcome. Yes, it's not easy. Yes, it takes work, but obstacles can definitely be overcome. You do not have to be a slave to the no's in your life. Yeses. Yes, you can. If there's a phenomenal story about a fellow by the name of Clint. Clint was a student in elementary school, and Clint had a twitch. The twitch was he constantly was finger strumming on his desk. The teacher told him to stop it, so he stopped it for 30 seconds. The students said, "Stop it already." He stopped it for 30 seconds, constantly reminded. And this went on and on and on, and finally the teacher could handle it no more and sent him to a principal. The principal said, "You got to stop this." He goes, "I try." He goes, "Sit on your hands. Just sit on them. Don't let your hands touch the desk unless you're writing." So Clint did this, but it wasn't easy. And every so often, and quite often, he ended up going back to his old self, right? Strumming and strumming and strumming, right? And the students were crazed, the teachers were crazed. One day, a substitute teacher said, "Clint, stay with me after class." So Clint said, "Oh, this guy doesn't know me. He doesn't know that it's a quirk. He's going to punish me. I'm going to get suspended." Everybody leaves. The teacher said, "Clint, you're strumming." So Clint says, "I know, it drives you crazy." He goes, No. Your strumming is unbelievable. You have rhythm. It's amazing. Have you looked into drumming? Have you looked into perhaps this is what your body's trying to tell you?" The next day, the substitute teacher brought him a drum and sticks. And Clint started to practice, and Clint got very good at it. Eventually, Clint joined a band. And he became one of the greatest drummers, Clint Pulver. Others saw it as an obstacle. Clint himself saw this as an impediment, as a twitch, if you will. If not for that substitute teacher, he would have had that twitch his whole life. His substitute teacher was able to see that this perceived obstacle was an opportunity. It's a very powerful lesson. I know this young girl who was born, and she had a bleeding disorder, and it was terrible. And lack factor 8, I believe it's called. And just it was very bad. And you know, she needed infusions, and it wasn't safe, and etc. And it's a sentence for life. God took away from her normalcy. However, with that came an incredible thing, is that she was brilliant. Just a brilliant person. Brilliant. Genius level. And she was able to take her disease, and she works for a lab, and she researches this and other diseases. She also raises money for hemophilia, because that may have been a terrible disease, but she turned it into something so positive. Right? So we have to look at our obstacles and say, how can not only I make the best of it, learn to live with it, how can I turn it into monetize it, turn it into a talent? How can I turn it into something to help mankind? You're not shackled to this obstacle. You're not shackled to this disorder. You're not shackled. You are. It's use it. Use it to your benefit. You know, I think of people who overcame obstacles. I think of Walt Disney. No fan of him because of his anti-Semitism stance. However, Walt Disney overcame poverty to build the Disney empire. He could have said, that's it, I'm stuck. I, Walt Disney, born a pauper, will die a pauper. Walt Disney did not let himself be brought down. Walt Disney worked and worked and worked on himself. And Walt Disney, because of his poverty, became who he was. Not despite, because. You know, we always say we can learn from our parents' mistakes. Absolutely. Take those mistakes and run with them. Winston Churchill, I don't know if you knew this, Winston Churchill had a learning disability. Winston Churchill was LD. Right? He had a learning disability. But he persevered. He overcame that obstacle. And he became one of the greatest people to ever live in the 20th century. Just incredible. Helen Keller comes to mind, right? Helen Keller, she was an unbelievable person, right? She took, because of her, it gave other people hope, and they were able to become functional human beings. Helen Keller, if perhaps she wasn't deaf, she wasn't blind, maybe we wouldn't see the advances. Right? I don't know if you know this, but just read Wikipedia on Abraham Lincoln. Just read. He suffered from depression. He lost his wife and children. He ran for office many times. and different offices and always lost. But yet somehow it didn't stop him. He didn't feel like a loser. He wasn't shackled in negativity. Abraham Lincoln was able to become one of the greatest men known to man. He was a man that literally ended slavery, knew what he had to do. Very difficult decision. But he had the courage. You know why he had the courage? Because he knew what misery meant. And he knew personal misery. And he had to end misery. So to use, I was dragged up, to use prior sufferings as an excuse. Human development, it's a gift. It's a gift wrapped in garbage. It's a gift wrapped in refuse, crap, whatever term you want to use. But it's a gift nonetheless. What can you learn from it? That's the second building block of human development. Be able to rise above. You know, there's this, I heard this story recently. There's a fellow by the name of Howard Lance. He got married to a woman called Gracie Lance. And they got married, decided to go on a honeymoon. So I don't know which one, but they said, instead of going to the Ritz-Carlton, instead of going to Aruba, instead of going to the south of France, why don't we just go to a rustic cabin surrounded by beautiful forests, a lake to ourselves where we can fish and we can just enjoy ourselves. And they did. So they came to this rustic, romantic, non-commercialized cabin. That's what they were looking for. And they pack up. They were going to go for 3-4 days. They hung up their clothes, etc. They went fishing. They came back, and they ate dinner, made love, and went to sleep. Middle of the night, a woodpecker, tap 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 tap, tap 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 tap. They woke up. They go outside, looking, shoo it away, come back inside, not having it. Tap, 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 tap. They were up all night. And the next morning it rained. And what they saw, the damage the woodpecker had done is it created a small hole. And rain got into their cabin and made their bed wet. Their sheets were wet. And it rained a lot. So they took the sheets away from the hole, they moved the bed away, and they moved their clothes away, and they squeezed out the rain. They're in a cabin, didn't have all the amenities of life. The next night, tap, 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 tap. And then it rained. Now it's a bigger hole. And it rained, and they finally, after hell on earth, they got back in the car after 3 days of woodpecker and rain. The wife turns to the husband. What do you think she said? What she could have said, what I would have said, is this fakakta vacation ruined our honeymoon. Right? We should have gone to the Ritz-Carlton. We should have gone to California. We should have gone. Whose idea was it anyway? And brought it up every day of our married life. Stuck in the craw. But she didn't. Gracie turned to Walter and said, you know, after all said and done, it was pretty wild. And it was pretty amazing. And we're going to laugh about this for the rest of our lives. Walter chuckled and said, well, it was an ordeal, but I hear what you're saying. And she said, you're an animator. why don't you make a cartoon about our experience? Walter Lantz did. Walter and Gracie Lantz came out with a product called Woody the Woodpecker. Many, many years later, when they're being interviewed, they asked them about that night. And they said that was the greatest night of our lives. We owe tribute to our honeymoon, those few nights, to that time. He says, because we became famous. We sold, we became famous animators. We made a lot of money. We were now in the social circles where people strive to be. We fell into it. And it was a gift. You can Google it. Just amazing. Walter and Gracie Lantz. So they took something that was negative and turned it into a positive. And that's something. We take a negative into a positive. We turn a positive into an incredible positive. That's what it means, redeem your kid. Teach your kid or anybody you have influence over how to view the cup as half full, not half empty. How to view life positive. If you're brought up viewing life negative, that the cup is half empty, it's going to be a tough life. You got to shake it. You got to get rid of the attitude. Because it's all about the tude. It's all about the tude. It's about attitude. It's about fortitude. It's about gratitude. You take these concepts and you try and become better and thank God for the challenges, because you would never know success without him. It's been a pleasure to instruct you today on the second building block of human development. If you've enjoyed this, please share with others, and let others know. So yesterday was the first one, identity. Today is redemption, freedom. Let freedom ring. God bless.